So, what exactly do you mean when you say, what do you mean?
I do not understand this. This really confuses me.
What's that supposed to mean?
Literally.
What's that supposed to mean?
What's that supposed to mean?
I don't know what you're talking about.
What are you talking about?
What's that supposed to mean?
Cultural anthropologist Ujwal Arkalgud and Motive-Base president Jason Partridge will tell you that perception and meaning are the primary pressure points that shape and create the world we live in.
Inconceivable! You keep using that word.
Let's explore why meaning matters.
I don't think it means what you think it means.
Now, here's your host, Aaron Trafford.
All right, welcome back into Why Meaning Matters. Of course, this is the show where we attempt to answer the question in the name. So we're coming off last show where we talked about kind of gross and dirty things like infections and disease and immunity and all of those kind of gnarly topics when it comes to health. And I don't know, okay, guys, I don't know if we triggered something, but I cross my heart, hope to die. As soon as we got off that call talking about infections, I think my whole household fell victim to the common cold. Like, I don't know if we triggered something there. But here's what I noticed is that whether it was at the preschool or at the kindergarten class, anyone with a runny nose or a cough was very quick to say, it's not COVID. It's just a regular sick. I'm just regularly sick. And so part of me is like, noticing this now where I wouldn't have noticed it before, that I'm thinking this is a shift in the way we're looking at health and wellness. We never would have made that distinction before. This is a regular cold, not a super bad cold, right? So I think, I mean, what do you guys think about that specific measure of meaning when it comes to health, A, and where are we seeing that present itself more specifically? Like, how are the shifts in health changing the way we present ourselves now?
Yeah, great question. I mean, the most obvious and direct impact is on skin. And I know any listeners out there who work in the skin or skin adjacency industries will know for a long time that we've been sort of tracking and waiting for the inside out approach to healthy skin to really kind of take shape in the mainstream, and now it's finally happening. And I'll start with one area of insight that we thought was really fascinating is this whole notion of deep healing, as the consumer calls it. This is the consumer's language. And what that really means is this acknowledgement that if I have bodily aches and pains, if I'm suffering from physiological ailments as well as psychological ailments, whether it's anxiety, allergies, back pain, whatever it is, all of that impacts my skin. And if I need to improve the health of my skin, if I need to look better, I actually need to take an inside-out approach, which means now I'm connecting that massage I go to or that acupuncture treatment I go to the way my skin looks. I'm also starting to connect exercise more directly to the way skin looks. And these relationships have existed for a long time. Obviously, scientifically, we know you work out, you're probably going to look better as a result of it. We kind of know that, but for it to directly come into the mainstream zeitgeist and link specifically to skin, and in particular the way our face looks, because that's, the key, that's very interesting.
I think it's really funny too, because, in previous episodes, we've talked about the interconnectedness of, meaning and the interconnectedness and how one thing can have this incredible impact on the other. And I mean, you touched on it, Aaron, where, I was at a restaurant and a lady at one of the other tables coughed, and all the eyes in the restaurant just turned on her in a moment, right? And so this idea that we're under a microscope, this idea that the actions that we take are basically kind of code for how well we are, and how well we are has become a status in a COVID world. So now when we think about that in the context of skin, how good I look has a deeper meaning than it did pre-COVID. And in addition to that, when we think about the role of COVID and how it's made us hyper aware of health, it's made us do more research, it's made us think about our immunity in a different way, it's made us think about how healthy we are. And in previous episodes, we talked about whether or not there really is a safety net or whether or not I'm on my own. So as people are going through this process where they're reassessing health, it is coming forward and presenting itself directly in relation to skin, because at the end of the day, that's really kind of one of the first things that people see when we come into contact with them.
Do you think that this is amplified by the fact that throughout the pandemic, everybody was on Instagram?
I'm sure it plays a huge role. I think to Jason's point, there's two aspects. One is that in the absence of maybe perhaps being out in the physical world, we have had more time, or we've kind of been forced to read about things that we didn't before. And this is in general, we're finding the average level of knowledge of the consumer in various areas like food, skin, health, well-being has increased through the pandemic. And this is pretty consistent no matter what industry you look at, even money, finance. And I think we're seeing that here, but I think to go back to Jason's point, I think this is very interesting because on one hand, you've got things like deep healing, which is inside out. On the other hand, you've got this notion of balance, which is really how I look on the outside as a reflection of how I am on the inside. So you've got both sides of the coin happening, right? On one hand, the inside impacts the outside. On the other hand, how I look tells the world that I'm in good health and good standing, which also potentially now tells the world that you can feel safer being around me in this, endemic environment. So that's very interesting. Now, all of this, of course, is mixed in with another topic which we've talked about, especially in the previous season, which is feminism and the growing movement towards a greater acknowledgement of the problems in society and the way women in particular are treated. And so one of the areas that's also coming up in the mix here is this whole notion of embracing imperfection. So in the middle of healing from the inside and achieving balance is also this notion that there is such a thing as imperfect balance.
I feel like just in that moment, all of my feelings about being a woman in this century just came to a point. It was like, I have to be perfect on the inside, healed on the inside, gorgeous on the outside, balanced and imbalanced all at the same time.
That's right.
What? What does that even mean?
That's right. And I think, so, let's talk about that, because what's happening in the midst of all of this is this desire that we have to be comfortable in having certain imperfections, and that's okay. So part of that means, maybe I'm unhappy about the way my gut area looks, and that's okay. But it's okay because ultimately I feel balanced, right? I'm working out in a way that feels good to me. I'm eating in a way that feels good to me. So all these elements on the inside are working, and therefore it's okay to allow some imperfection on the outside.
I remember sitting on a call kind of like right midpoint COVID, and one of our clients hopped on the call and was wearing kind of their full workout gear. And they acknowledged at the very beginning that, in the before time, she would have been wearing makeup. She would have been very aware of how her hair was. She would have been all put together given the role that she had. But in this particular instance, she, felt the freedom to kind of not worry about what was happening on the face, but at the same time there was also some signaling going on because she was wearing incredibly high-end workout gear that was really showcasing that she was dedicated to this idea of exercise, right? So at the end of the day, here's an instance where there was a little bit of code that was coming through where the shift was actually articulated by her in the moment, where she was saying, it's okay that I'm able to kind of not worry about dolling myself up, pardon the expression, because at the end of the day, I am working on bettering myself because I took time before this call in order to exercise, and then I just jumped on the call. So here is an instance where wellness is basically kind of moving up in this on the balance, if you will. The balance is starting to shift a little bit because at the end of the day, there's something that is becoming a little bit more pertinent and important than kind of some of the old triggers that may have been a way of showcasing one's value through how they look.
I think that's fascinating. And it's bringing up, I signed up, it's next week for a week-long conference, for lack of a better phrase. It's all online, but it's going to help my business move forward. And one thing I noticed is that I've gone to it in years past, and it was all business. It was like log in, do the networking, do the thing. And this time, the first half of the first day is exercise, health and well-being, meditative check, like spiritual visioning. And I thought that was a really big shift in tone in terms of what they are leading this business conference with.
Yeah. Yeah, and Erin, there's a big distinction here, and I do want to make that distinction because there are many brands right now, for example, and I think, Kim Kardashian recently was advertising one on the cover of some magazine, I forget now, but in essence, what all these brands are doing is they're bringing in different sized models to wear their clothes. That's not what embracing imperfection is.
It's not.
Because those models are all stunning. They have perfect skin. There is no imperfection there. All they have is a slightly different body type than an extremely skinny body type, which we've been used to seeing in the modeling industry, right? That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is true embrace of imperfection. That is, if I have blemishes on my skin, maybe I don't need to conceal them anymore.
Correct.
What we're talking about is maybe if, I have a little bit of crow's feet under my eyes, I don't need to go crazy hiding all of that to make myself somehow feel youthful. Because, goddamn, I'm a mom and I have 2 kids and life is busy. Like, it's okay. That's what we're talking about. So that also, of course, relates to things like wrinkles and stretch marks, right?
Yep.
It relates to people saying, I don't need to worry about my post-pregnancy stretch marks just because I'm wearing this top that might show it a little bit. Who cares? So what we're really talking about is a true embrace of imperfection in a way. Well, I shouldn't say true because it's never really true, but at least it's a step further than what we're seeing in the mainstream in the industry, right?
For sure.
So that's important to distinguish.
What if we talk about skin health, though? Like, let's bring it back to the first thing you said was skin.
Yes.
And the meaning of that as it pertains to health. Here is where I am, let's pretend, working for a cosmetics company. And I'm listening to what you're saying about how we are shifting toward deep healing, internal, not superficial, embracing imperfection. How do I use this if I market or I sell cover up or foundation or fake tanner or whatever? What is that? How do I use that information?
I mean, I think that the first thing is really embracing the idea that a single product in and of itself is not interrelated to the entire product line. And I think that, as we think about the kind of the change that is underway, it's not enough just to think about these consumers as a canvas that has been painted upon to create a completely new image. There is more subtext to the consumer than there ever has been before.
And that's a huge point.
If we think about the kind of the cliched, quintessential American woman, like if I said, if think of it as you're casting a movie, and I want you to think of a 40-year-old mom in a red state, and I want you to kind of picture her in your mind. We're probably thinking of a blonde woman wearing a lot of makeup who is very fit, but that kind of fits that the prom queen that never gave up on being the prom queen, right? Like we've seen that in the movies. We've seen that perpetuated through kind of entertainment in culture. And there's a reason for that. It's because cliches exist for this reason. But what we're seeing here is that is shifting and that's changing, and that it's becoming a much more complex kind of place. These companies have seen the rise of clean beauty. These companies have seen the rise of natural starting to basically kind of transform the expectations. And that is all linked back to what Ujwal referenced earlier, which is this notion of feminism. Really, at the end of the day, this is not something that is just going to impact cosmetic companies. It's going to have an impact on the fashion industry as well. But more importantly, what we're seeing here is that this dedication and this re-evaluation of self-worth is something that is going to change how we think about ourselves. But more importantly, it's also changing how we think about other people. And it's changing our expectations and how we treat other people. Because really, at the end of the day, if I'm worried about how stress is impacting my life, if I'm worried about how emotion and rest is impacting my life, I'm more aware of the shoes that other people are walking in. And that's leading to kind of, again, a shift in regards to how I expect other people to look when I deal with them in day-to-day life.
Okay, so I love everything that you just said, and I want to do a whole debrief on that in the next episode, the concept of like ethical egoism, altruism, how this actually makes society better. So let's put a pin in this one and move on to the next episode. I want to jump right in. We're going to talk about the case study that you guys did with Nielsen, and it kind of touches on all the stuff that you just talked about. So this is why meaning matters. If you would like to leave us a comment, please drop us an email at hello@storystudionetwork.com. Make sure you share this episode with your friends and colleagues and subscribe so you don't miss out. We will see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to Why Meaning Matters with Ujwal R. Colgood, Jason Partridge, and your host, Aaron Trafford.
Inconceivable! You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Why Meaning Matters is produced for Motive Base and the Story Studio Network by Eye Contact Productions.